Hey guys, this is Kami Ken, and welcome back to one really long conversation about comics and life. And today I kind of want to explore this idea of, let's say, skill points in comics and manga. I want to explain exactly why a manga like Hunter x Hunter can succeed in an industry where you have creators like Jim Lee or Jason Fabok creating entire masterpieces within their art styles, but not exactly within their stories because they're only artists, not writers. Hunter x Hunter has had chapters where there are basically character sketches that come out. They're not fully drawn, and yet they tell a complete story that people can still come back to week. Those chapters have been redrawn for the for the tankobon release, for the full book release, but when they came out, they were still accepted as this is the story continued. People did complain about it, but it was still accepted as the story because of the nature of the manga industry and how quickly they need to create the work on a week-to-week basis. Whereas in the comics industry, it has a very high focus on getting the anatomy correct, working on backgrounds. Every page is almost a separate piece of art that needs to be carefully done and crafted, regardless of the quality of the story. And this is because of the distribution of skill points within the creators in both industries. Let me explain. Let's say you have an artist alone. They do not write. You have this both in the manga and the comics industry. They may be very, very skilled at the craft of drawing, making things look fully rounded, fully three-dimensional, and telling a story on the page to the point where you don't even need an anime adaptation. You don't need a live action adaptation. It looks real on the page. It looks like a fully crafted movie in the comic book itself. And this is because the split between the creators of these books, you have the penciler, you have the inker, you have the colorist, the letterer. The disciplines are split between multiple people. And so if you have a great penciler, they are fully focused on doing the best fully rounded, fully rendered characters they can and making it all make sense within the context of the story and the storytelling that they've learned over the years. All their skill points have been maxed out into penciling. And so they are the best at that. Nothing else. They don't write, they don't color, they don't ink. They just do penciling, and all their skill points are maxed out into that. Whereas if you look at let's say a Yoshihiro Togashi in Hunter x Hunter, he has skills in both in penciling and inking and in coloring, as he does the colors for the manga of Hunter x Hunter and all his works. And he also has insane writing ability. And in fact, his skills are so high in the writing ability, his skills in drawing ability are almost dampened in a way because they're not as important as the quality of the writing of his story. So he doesn't have to fully round out the characters. He doesn't have to fully render everything. In fact, he uses rendering very carefully when he does go all out on the rendering. He uses it to express a character's expression more. He uses it to emphasize a moment of impact. He doesn't use it for every page, and he can't do that for every page. It's basically impossible for him, because he'd have to Could he bring it up to the level of an American comic artist? He could, but it's not necessary to the crafting of his story, and it would probably detract from the effect that he's trying to create with his work. His skill points are distributed mostly in writing, and that's why the level of art doesn't have to be as high. I find that this is the same with a creator like Yusuke Murata of One Punch Man. He is mainly an artist. He loves drawing, and he loves rendering things to make them look either realistic, or he likes making the fantastical look realistic. But he doesn't have very high writing skill. It's very low. He can't really be a writer artist. He has to mainly be only an artist, which is why he partners up. His most famous projects are when he partners up with a writer to actually bring out the best of his ability. That's Ice Shield 21 and One Punch Man, where in one, he's working with a writer to create a story about American football. And then in the other, he's basically readapting the webcomic of the creator One. And his greatest strengths are taking the words that somebody else is writing and then bringing them to life. And really, that's the point of what you have to do in the comics industry to fully flourish, is to focus on what you're actually good at and put those strengths in your work. Not everyone is going to be all well-rounded at doing everything. I would say the person who has the highest skill points in all realms would be Eiichiro Oda, in where he's writing, drawing, coloring. He's doing everything at such an intensely high level. You can tell he has help, he has assistants to help him create that work, but 99.9% of it is his brainchild. It's all coming from him, and those skill points are all maxed out in basically across the board. Whereas in comics, you can ask yourself the question, who is a better artist, Jason Fabok or Jaime Hernandez from Love and Rockets fame? In Love and Rockets, the characters are basically a bunch of lines put together, and they come out looking like living, breathing people. But they're not fully rendered, they're not fully formed like a Jason Fabok Batman or Superman. They're not fully rendered like that, and the backgrounds are minimal. Does that mean he's a worse artist because he doesn't render his backgrounds that way or draw the anatomy the same way that he does? No, of course not. It's just that his skill points are distributed in different ways across his comic making abilities. So Jaime Hernandez has put his skill points into writing, into creating characters that seemingly have life on the page. He doesn't bother that much with colors. Almost everything he does is black and white, and he focuses on drawing women primarily. He can draw men and all that, but he focuses on the stories of the women that are his main characters in the story of Love and Rockets. And all of that comes to great effect for the audience that he's trying to create for. Whereas with Jason Fabok, who is creating primarily for a superhero comic book audience, that audience appreciates fully formed, fully rounded characters that look super cool and awesome, like Batman, Superman, all the characters that Jason Fabok draws. they're fully formed, and he has put all his skill points into creating characters that look real on the page, almost as if they're in a movie. He's put all his skill points towards that, and that's why his art looks fully rounded, fully rendered. Everyone's like they're jumping off the page. They're real. But that doesn't make him a worse artist than Jaime Hernandez. Jaime Hernandez can make characters seem real by the way that they act, and by the way that they are portrayed on the page, and by the writing that he writes his characters with. It's almost as if they're real people, and you're just jumping into their lives and seeing what's going on. It's entrancing whenever I read a Love and Rockets book. It's like if I read for 1 minute, 1 minute turns into 5 minutes. 5 minutes turns into 10, and before you know it, I'm sucked into their lives again, and I'm like, man, what happened there? Like, oh, did they ever meet up again? Like I'm really looking at the characters and the lives that they're living. Whereas with the Jason Fabok book, I can look at the rendering, I can appreciate it on a different level, because he's focused so heavily on rendering the characters and making them pop out at you like they're there. It's just a different distribution of skill points. That's my theory on it, because I've noticed some people get down on themselves whenever they think, oh man, I'm not as good a artist as that guy, I'm not as good a penciler as that person. It's because your focus has been in a different location of the arts, or in a different, you've distributed your skill points differently than the other person has. Writing especially takes a very long time for your talent to show in that, because a lot of it is just thinking things over, writing them down, and you can't really post that on social media. It's just like, oh, I wrote this sentence today, and then who cares? Like, nobody cares. Like, it's just a sentence. But it's only when it's strung together that it looks, that it comes together, and people can finally see like what kind of talent you're working with. Whereas with like the creator of Attack on Titan, it's very difficult for you to see how his skills are distributed when you're only looking at the art. If he were to draw a human or whatever, the anatomy would kind of be off and everything will look kind of weird, and you'd just be like, man, this guy doesn't really have a talent for comics. There's no way he'll ever make it. But then when you read his story and read it all strung together, it's like, oh, now I understand this guy is an actual genius, because he's thought his story through from beginning to end, back and forth, all the ins and outs, all the way through, and he delivered it that way. And I think that's a good way to look at your skill level in making comics. You just think about how you've distributed your skill points in the creation of comics, so that you will understand that your skills distribution is simply a matter of how much time you put into different areas of your craft during your development. You're not behind. Like, you're not worse or better than this artist or this creator. They just put their focus on something else that they considered more important than this skill that you're working on. Personally, I put most of my skill points in writing and in cartooning and in coloring, because there's certain elements of storytelling that I want to bring out, which I'll get into later on this channel. It's going to be amazing what I have to show you, because for years I've targeted and pinpointed exactly the kind of skills that I want to work on and focus on in my art. And I've written them down so that I can get at each of these skills one by one over the course of my career, so that I can build my ultimate foundation for evolving storytelling. I basically set this up years ago, before I even went to the Kubert School, exactly what skills I'm going to focus on in order to evolve storytelling in the future. And that's basically it. Think about what kind of skills that you're focusing on that allows you to do what you do, and what are you putting your time and focus and effort into, and what are you not. And yeah, that'll be it for this video. Like, comment, and thanks for subscribing, thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next one. Peace.